saw Victor Victoria, and let's get to work analyzing this. Start with the through lines, identify the 4 through lines. Overall story, short, sweet synopsis.
I missed the first 2 seconds, but Julie, I'm not sure that name. Julie Andrews and Peter Carroll. That's opposite of the name.
Robert Preston.
Robert Preston.
Well, just when you're thinking about the overall story, it's best to think of them in terms of what their play area is, not their names.
Okay.
Because we don't want to stand in their shoes. We want to sort of look at them. So, what is, if you're going to say who she is in a synopsis without saying identifying a name?
She goes into audition for.
She's a singer.
Struggling singer.
Struggling singer.
Struggling singer.
To audition, and discovers that she's overtrained and too talented, and she's broke in Paris. She ends up meeting a fellow stranded singer in a restaurant, and they dupe the restaurant and figure out how to survive in the city, and they come up with a plot to make her into a transvestite singer, performer, because they think that will bring them success.
So, bringing that down is it's essentially a, well, like they say, a woman playing a man playing a woman in 1930s Paris. It's a sham. And, right. They're passing off it. She's passing herself off as a man playing a woman.
That would be the most simple way to say it. Yeah.
Well, because what we want to do is we're not trying to identify sort of the synopsis of the plot. We really just want to key on where's the center of the conflict in that big picture. And so the conflict, I mean, you've got a couple things going on. That's sort of the big mechanism of how to go about it. You've got a struggling, starving artist, and a couple of starving artists come up with a plan to create a fake cross-dressing singer. Yeah. So part of it is a woman who's dressed like a man, dressed like a woman, playing a man dressed like a woman, whatever it is, the phrase. Now, what is the problem with that?
You can't make a living as a woman entertainer.
Right. So you just
the inspector says it's fraud to the public.
Okay, so they're perpetuating a fraud. Okay.
Trying to keep it covered up. Yeah.
It's Tootsie.
But before Tootsie, I think.
Right, and apparently it was originally done in Germany in the 1930s. So this is a remake, which I didn't know until just recently. It was Victor und Victoria. All right, there's more to it, which we'll get into a little bit later. Main character?
Julie Andrews.
Pardon?
Julie Andrews.
Right, and her name is?
Victoria.
It opens on Toddy.
Yeah,
but
the first 10 minutes.
Is the first opening character?
No, not necessarily, but we'll go with Victoria. Yeah. I was a little uncertain myself, but
halfway through you were uncertain?
Toward in second half, there, Toddy kind of falls into the background. So yeah, I got to go with Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who's the influence character?
I see 2 candidates.
Yeah.
Toddy
or King.
All right. Now, what would the relationship between Victoria and Toddy be?
Partners.
Yeah.
Friends and partners.
Conspirators.
Principally, yeah, they're partners. They're partners in crime or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what about Victoria and King? what kind of relationship is
It's
it?
a romantic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that says is this is they're not going to be. It's not going to be a handoff because this partnership is not the same thing as a romance. It's a different kind of relationship.
Well, she just jumped from his bed to King's bed.
But she doesn't really. She's not romantically involved with Claudia.
Also,
Everybody thinks so, but that's not really.
also when there's a handoff, the type of relationship remains the same across.
Just as the influence character always has to have that same perspective.
Right.
See, that's the thing, is it's
Yeah.
not the body, it's not the player, it's the perspective, it's the domain that stays the same.
So the relationship is improving in terms of the tag.
Right, it's like the ghosts in the Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
They're all ghosts, they're different past, present, future, progress, essentially. But they all represent, all concerned with Scrooge's reclamation. They all have the same perspective. They all have the same influence.
Well, they're all proxies of Marley. It's what they're.
No, they're not proxies of Marley. Marley is one of the four. He's progress.
Okay.
He's how things are changing.
Uh-huh.
This is
Oh,
where
okay.
this is what I had 7 years ago, and you have been building it ever since.
But I mean,
That's how
yeah.
things are changing, and then past, present, and future.
Mhm.
So yeah, you've got the full quad there.
Mhm.
So this could go one of two ways. Anybody care to guess how you can explain these? Because they're both in there. There's no question they're both in there.
Yeah.
But where is this relationship? This one is clearly a subjective story, a relationship through line.
Yeah.
Question is this a relationship through
This-
line,
this might
or
be
is
more of a
this
story? Yeah.
the partnership that's set up for here?
I'm guessing he's sometimes more of a help character or a support or whatever. I don't really know yet.
Like a guardian.
But more like a guardian. So
Good Toddy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Toddy. So
I don't know. You could even be the protagonist, depending on how you define it.
yeah, or even just that it feels that the
That's why you said the help character, so not so
Yeah.
much a guardian, but at least that characteristic.
but I mean that definitely King, especially in the third act, it feels very very much like a subjective story that is sort of blossoming into impact and everything.
Okay.
So,
Now, what's the other way that this could go?
The sub story.
Yes.
Because isn't there the whole thing about she says something's really difficult pretending to be a man or something like that? It
Right.
almost sounds like
So there
you and
really
I
is
sort
a relationship that is an emotional center relationship more than the partnership. They certainly do have the partners in crime, but they also have the more personal side. Whereas this romance looks to be a sub-story, which is one of the reasons the movie's so long. Okay? Which means it would imply that there's a set of characters that go along with it that aren't necessarily part of the main story. And there are. The
So-
girlfriend, the Chicago people. I mean, it's not that they don't play a role in the main story, but particularly, King and Mr. Bernstein.
The bodyguard. Mhm.
Yeah, the bodyguard. They are part of
Squash.
the big picture.
so you're saying the romance would be a sub-story.
Right.
So the
And
relationship.
who's the main character in that sub-story?
King.
King. Exactly.
I mean,
King is the main character. That's why we have those scenes with him going and getting beat up, and him having real trouble with the whole homosexuality element of it, and the scenes with him having performance issues with his girlfriend. That's King stuff. We're sitting there watching a King story.
And so, this Toddy Victoria relationship, does that remain the relationship throughout of the main story?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and that's the one we end up resolving that one, and then we end up resolving the sub story, and then we resolve the main story. The sub-story starts within it and also ends within it. So it's really a little story inside of it. You know, it's
Chris,
not fully explored. Yes.
is Toddy her impact character?
Yes. He's
Okay,
also a partner in the overall story, but he's the one who's trying to get her to, you know, loosen up. To
right. He's the one that gets her to pursue
Right.
this whole thing anyway.
Pardon me?
I said he's the one who got her to pursue the whole thing anyway. It was his idea.
Right, right. Well, but you see, there's a logistical reason for that. They're both starving. They need jobs. They need to make money. You know, but beyond that, they really do form a really strong friendship, and I think it's really less partners than really two people who become really strong friends and support, you know, one another. So I think that's one of the reasons why it kind of starts down one lane and then sort of starts to veer off and then wraps it up really nice and tight and neatly at the end. I think that's what's going on. The Chicago stuff could all be part of the main story, but I think you could easily have told this story. You still need King, you know, perhaps, and then if all the other Chicago stuff wasn't there, then King would probably, it may have been a handoff, and King would pop in and be more of a romantic relationship. But we'll look at and see what the domains are, so we can figure out if in fact they really do hand off. But it feels to me much more like a Jerry Maguire, where you have the romance story and you have the sports story. That's when you have the singer's story and the romance story.
So just to clarify, like if there was some different story, if there was say a mentor-mentee type of subjective line, if there was some type of handoff at some point to a different player, then that new player who just takes on that. So
there would still be that relationship.
There would still be mentor/mentee.
Right, because otherwise you're not making the full argument about that type of relationship.
And when it's not, it's likely that it's then part of something.
Or it's
like
broken.
A subplot or it's broken.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of reasons why people stop part of the story halfway through or kill off their main characters or whatnot. So assuming that it is by intent and it works,
right.
You know, you first go, does the story work? And if it does, then it indicates, okay, there may be something a little more complicated going on than just a simple, straightforward, here's how it's going. So if you were going to say that, then in this case you'd have King and Victoria and romance. So that's the kind of story. And the thing is, it still hinges on the same overall story. So it's not really not fully there. There's a little bit of hint of what's going on in Chicago and stuff, but that's really underdeveloped. That's why it's a sub-story. It's not a parallel story. You know, Jerry Maguire, actually, you really have two almost completely full stories that you could story form. I'm not sure we could story form this one, but I think if we could, it'd be a very similar, maybe end up being very similar, so it may just be a matter of they meant it to be handed off because it sort of functionally did the same thing. But we'll see, because depending on how the answers to these questions work, we'll be able to tell if that's in fact the case. All right. So let's start the one with Victoria as the main character and start answering some of these questions. So, is she a change or steadfast character? Well, the beginning starts with her. She's a singer, and she's a coloratura. She's a professional singer who's not willing to do whatever it takes for money because her landlord wants to trade the rent that's due for sex.
Well, she's the one who brings it up, but she's also kind of delirious.
And she really doesn't
Starvation.
want to do
It
it.
was.
I mean,
She didn't mean it. She was just.
no, she's starving. She's fainting, and that's
Mhm.
and that.
Okay.
So she really didn't want to, and
Well, the very last scene of the movie she changes because she stops being a singer. She
Well,
had the opportunity to change earlier when King said you don't have to do that anymore. And she said, no, I want to paint.
yeah, but if,
well, the question would be, what is she changing or remaining steadfast about? At the beginning, the problem she has seems to be kind of not an identity issue. It's much more of a survival issue. So it doesn't sound like this is a story about how to survive, because it sort of gets past that pretty quickly, or not necessarily quickly, but it gets past it. That's sort of setting the scenario for the big picture, I think. So it identifies who she is, and Toddy who he is, and in the bigger picture, sort of what's going on. But I don't think we know. I don't think the story starts until they begin. The overall story doesn't start until they get the idea about, hey, why don't you look just like a man? The mistaken identity with her seeing his boyfriend and punching him, and he mistakes her for a man, and Toddy gets the same idea. It's like, wait, I've got this great idea. We'll create this deception. That's when the overall story starts. That's when the big picture starts. And she's resistant to it, right? She says, no, I don't really want to do this. I have a real problem with it. I can't nobody will believe me, blah, blah, blah. But then she commits to it. Says, all right, I'm going to go down this path. That's the beginning of that story. Where is she at the end?
She changes. She changes back into being a woman as opposed to someone pretending to be a man.
She picks her life over success.
Yeah.
That's sort of
Well,
it's to be famous and have a good career and all this stuff. And she's like, okay, well, initially it's an easy in because she's starving, but she gets hooked into it. They're doing great. She's having a fun time. She's always still not really at ease with it. But by the end, she's like, okay, I'm going to give all this up because I will pick love over everything else.
Well, also it's such a house of cards that's starting to fall apart there toward the end. So it's like,
We know that.
Okay.
They don't know that. See, that's the thing, that we have, as the audience, we get that God's eye view. We see the detective, we see all that stuff that's going on that they're completely oblivious to. And it just so happens through fortune and because she's being really challenged and ultimately says, this is not for me. And it just happens, at the right time, which makes it much funnier because it doesn't turn into a tragedy. It turns into a comedy because it's all undone, and it appears that there was really nothing there when, in fact, the guy who was following them did, in fact, find out exactly what's going on, and which is also what makes the Chicago group come out, because there really isn't anything going on. It really is a woman. So you played both sides of it, and that's the humor in it. That's the type of humor. So in that context, she does seem to be a changed character, right? I mean, because she's willing to do almost not anything, but do a lot of things she would never think of doing at the beginning, and by the end, the thing that the thing she wants most, she's going to give up for love, and that's.
Yeah, but it's not a leap of faith kind of change, though.
No. It's just a comedy. It's all pretty light.
Yeah.
When you're talking about bandwidth, it's like like this. We're not talking really highs and lows here. It's a pretty narrow bandwidth. So she's a changed character. All right. Approach, doer or beer. Is she someone who is more inclined to do or be? Now that would imply that Toddy is a steadfast character, which is very consistent. So I mean that's the other flip side of the coin. We see that as well, right?
The impact character has to be opposite.
Yes.
Or
When you have ones to change character, the other will be steadfast.
Okay.
It's sort of one defines the other. There
main
will
character-
there will always be a change character, and there will always be a steadfast character. It's just which one is which is what changes. Okay, main character approach, doer to beer.
Sure.
Doer, and give some examples, especially when you talk about personal problem solving.
Oh, as far as the problems that happen to her?
Not problem solving, but
Well, she goes out
conflicts
there
in
and she's
her
like,
for
I'm
her.
hungry. And she goes to a restaurant with a cockroach. Do her. She could have just sat on the street and sold matches, but she did that instead. Took chances. I think that would.
Yeah.
Give another example somewhere in the middle. Is there a scene you can think of that has where she's dealing with something on a more personal level? Because this is the beginning.
No, she beats people up here and there.
Which punches the boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not disagreeing. You just need more than a single point, because at a point you can spin any direction
You
you
want to
want.
find points throughout the
You're
story.
right. We need enough to sort of pin it down. Any other ones that come to mind?
The girlfriend. She like drags the girlfriend off into the bedrooms to show her that she's got tits.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. All right. Okay, that's fine. Three is enough, especially in a comedy. But you think, and this is not something that's necessarily one or the other, but also Toddy is much more of a beer. His boyfriend is a doer, and he's a beer, and so she comes in. She's much more of the doer, and she's the one who's the breadwinner, but he's the one who, is more the persona. So that is this, supports it but doesn't pick it. Okay. Problem-solving style, linear or holistic. This is for this would be for our main character, Victoria. And of course, you do have the character of Victor as one of the overall objective characters too, because he is a character. But I don't think we really need to get into that.
Well. You go.
I'm not sure at all.
No,
I was going to go for linear, but I'm not sure.
I'm thinking of scenes like when she's talking to James Garner for the first time, and the way she's sort of deflecting his questions and sort of deflecting the points he's making is.
Which character is that? I'm sorry, mixed up
King.
with the actors.
King. I get a sense that she's holistic. I'm not certain about it, but I'm thinking of that particular scene and the way she's sort of changing the balance of perceptions and the balance, and of course maybe that's
like
a
a woman
subjective
wouldn't
story in
have
the
to
beat,
prove herself.
I'm thinking that's probably more in the B story.
Okay.
That's why I was going to suggest try to pick an example without King, because we already know that they have a relationship and they're going to be there. Well, I mean, look at the cockroach. Yes.
When Toddy is when she's taking his temperature, and she comes in and she realizes that he's like shaking it down or not had it in his mouth, because she feels him, which is a, I don't know, womanly thing to do, and knows that he's changed the thermometer.
Well,
that's sort of a.
It's more of a cause and effect. She's like, I look at this and I feel this is like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's like you have to do this, get this, just get warm, or whatever they're doing. So you got to do this if you want to get better, type of thing.
Right. I mean, the whole idea of the cockroach is really, if I bring a cockroach, I will get a free meal. because that's a very cause and effect type of way of looking at it. And she seems blind to sort of the relationship thing, which is why it's funny when the waiter says, "Okay, so you have a free meal, and what about him?" It's like, but
well, then consider that someone might have tried this before, and
yeah, I
she's
mean,
not the first.
we can leave this one open. I think that'd be fine to leave it open. It seems like she's supposed to, at least in the main story, she's supposed to be more linear. But we can just leave that
Well,
one
again, she says to Toddy, wait a minute, you want me to play a man playing a woman playing I'm a woman playing that, and it's not quite registering,
Well, then she says, well, they'll never believe that they'll never believe I'm a Polish prince. He goes, that he's a Polish prince. She goes, and he goes, exactly. He's a Polish prince. They know that the prince part is fake. So he's looking at how everybody's going to see the relationship, and she's looking at the logic and saying this logic is not going to play right. This smells dirty. This is not. And he's like, yeah, I know. Linearly, it doesn't make sense but what it does do is it distracts them from really where they should be looking.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I can go with that.
So I'll just put the little dotted line on that so we can.
Yeah, I picked it up from him. Except I do.
Yesterday was a very
Oh, you did one of those? Oh,
yeah. Dotted lines and squiggly lines. And
I dotted squiggly if I'm. It's like, well, yeah, I did the same thing. Story driver, action or decision.
Okay. Yeah, the inciting incident. Okay. Okay.
Well, that's
the boyfriend comes back. She is dressed in his clothes. Okay. He sees her. She punches him in the face. Okay. He takes her as a man, and then Toddy gets the idea to pass her off as a man. And so it becomes a question of which one of those, starts the plot rolling. Is it the punching in the face? Is it the mistaken identity? Is it the decision to pursue this scheme?
Well, okay, then look at other places. How does it wrap up?
Isn't it decision? Because I think the decision was made to stop the act, pretty much.
Well, she certainly decides to stop playing it.
Yeah.
Is the story over then?
No.
No, it's not.
What drives her to that is the nightclub owner that hired Sherlock.
Isn't it when
because his action of bringing the police and saying we're going to convict you of a fraud, and you have to prove. They find out that they're coming, and so she bows out and Toddy steps in. So I would say that action drove that decision.
Yeah, but what really happened
although she had already previously decided she was going to step out, just not when.
The decision didn't bring the story to an end. It definitely brought it to a climax. Yeah. Because it wasn't resolved. What the action that ended the story
is it when they settle on the fact that she's a
yes, the scene you don't see where he goes in and basically sees Toddy with the pants without any pants.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That action absolutely it's like you idiot, we see the fallout of it, but because they have the resolution of the B story, they have to really wrap that up, and they have.
So is that more like a?
That finishes the story.
But
the investigation is over.
So what she does, when she decides, is that more like a main character resolve at the moment, where it's climaxing her personal through line?
Yes. Okay. That's her through line pretty much ending at that point. She makes it. She changes. She has changed at that point. She says, "No more. I'm getting off this horse. The horse isn't done riding, but I'm getting off here." And it's like, holy crap, And then they find out that the the inspector is here, and so
Then
which just turns out to be a really good thing because they already had to replace her, and so it worked out.
Then the first act turn would be when that really well-known agent guy, whoever hires them for a show. Then, right? They have 6 weeks to prepare, get ready. Would that be the when the driver shows up in the overall story?
Well, okay, now the conflict comes from the investigation.
Actually, no. Well, okay, I was gonna say, I think the act turn is when she takes the wig off and everybody says, "Oh, it's a man." And that seems to turn, especially if the overall story is in one of the internal domains. That really seems to turn things that changes people's perceptions, that sends things off into a different direction. I think that's
right.
But
you also have the investigation and the breaking of the incident where she breaks the glass by singing, which is sort of like, now they've gotten a big clue, the ones who are trying to follow her, that there's something truly false here, because really that's where the antagonist is the really thin line with the other bar owner that who first dismissed her as like, well, we need somebody a little seedier than you. You're too good and you won't really be good for business. So I think that you've got that's undertone. That's kind of where the conflict's supposed to be, because otherwise there's really not a whole lot of conflict. But it's a comedy, so you just have enough there to move the story forward. But it does appear to be action. It could be decision. If you looked at the thing that tells me it's not is that because her decision not to perform should have been the end of the story.
Yeah.
If it was truly the closing beat, but it isn't. Right.
Do you usually look at the resolution of the story to figure out what the story driver was?
No. Well, yes. You want to look at there are at least five places where it shows up. The inciting event, the closing event, and the 3-act turns. And so those are the things that are the midpoint, the two major act turns and the midpoint.
Because they're all at the same time.
They're all going to have, the driver is going to be associated with each of those.
It's not to say that this movie necessarily
has all the beats.
Can convey the story form perfectly anyway.
Right.
So,
I couldn't figure out
especially
what the midpoint was.
Especially if there's like a B story form kind
It's
of
like a Z
creeping
pattern.
in.
You can tell that the midpoint of the overall story.
Right.
Kind of take one through line at a time and go through this.
Well, this is the main character. This is the overall story. And then we'll look at the 4 domains for the story limit, time lock, or option lock. It's not 6 weeks. He sets this arbitrary 6-week time, but there's not a 6-week time limit. Mm-hmm. So it's an option lock. And what are the options?
Continue singing as a man, or let that life go.
Right, but that's sort of the question of maybe what the goal is, but the options are there's a conflict. They're perpetuating a fraud.
They can prove she's a man.
Well, they're perpetuating a fraud. There are only a certain number of ways that they could be discovered. And as they slowly, those things get turned over, and that's why the last thing that is available to them is the check the genitalia. That's the last thing, and that's pretty much what brings it all to that brings it all up in the air. Now, really, what closes the story, the action that closes the story, is Toddy playing Victoria, because that action clearly shows. There's no question that it's a guy. And so it wraps up any question that people had about Victoria, whatever was going on and the mystery of it and stuff. It pretty much puts a nail in that coffin.
It's a good thing nobody in that room had seen the act before.
Yeah.
Well, but even if they had it, still it was very funny, and
they introduced us once again.
Yes. So if they'd seen it, they would have. they would have been in on the joke, and the ones who hadn't would have
Honestly,
just
I
thought,
almost it was so. I mean, well, overkill.
That was sort of the point.
Originally, I thought it's something after the aftermath. I figured it out in the aftermath. Because originally, I really thought that nobody was buying it, and that she was gonna do a big coming out thing. You know, that there was gonna be a big Tootsie moment. I really thought that was gonna happen, and I figured, oh wait, no, that was supposed to be it.
And she said she was going to do that.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
and then it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and she didn't. So originally, my first thought when at rolling credits, I was like, she didn't really resolve, did she? And then I figured like, oh, but she did.
yes, exactly. That's what ended it. And that's why I think the checking the genitalia was really the last. That's what brought it to the crisis. At that point, she couldn't go on.
Yeah.
You know, they had to, proverbially shit or get off the pot. You know, whatever. I already know this is not going to be this is going to explicit rating anyway, so might as well say. So just because of subject matter. So that I think is really when everything then resolved out.
Yeah.
Outcome, success, or failure. Don't know what the goal is.
Failure.
Well, what was the goal?
Well, the goal is
To have the career, to be able to eat.
Well, but they succeeded in that. Eating, they got the money, they got the success, they got the wealth, they got everything,
But she
and they
didn't
got
keep
away
it.
with it. But they got away with it.
They're all happy. It's a happy ending.
Right. I mean, it's not like they caught her. That would be a failure. You know, they are perpetuating a fraud, and they got away with it. You know, the one person who figured it out, he's the one who ended up getting, his thumb smashed again, or fingers smashed again.
That was a really funny scene. And just to cut before the reaction, that was.
Yes. I was giggling beforehand because I just remember seeing it.
And
then, of course,
Still scene.
yeah. And then again, it's a success, good story. So, there's definitely, she's happy with being a girl and all is well, right? Okay, so before we do the domains, let's just talk about the King romance story, King Victoria romance story. So that's kind of about this. What's the overall story in that one? What would that be?
Well, do they set up anything about him in the first 15 minutes?
Yep. You know he is a rich guy from Chicago who's got mob connections.
Okay.
Sort of. I mean, they kind of imply that, but that's about all you know. And very quickly you learn that that's how he makes his money.
It was confusing at first because I was not following this well, and I thought, is he a king? Because we got a count and then.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
No, that's just his name.
Yeah.
Well, I think this transition into this sub-story, it's very, well, I'll be nice, it's subtle. I don't think it was intentional. I think it sort of pulled into this personal area that was a little bit to the side. And it would have been much easier to see it would have been much easier if she was the main character of it, to see how it would actually be the same story. But he's clearly the main character in that sub-story. It's the guy about this straight guy who works with mobsters from Chicago, falls in love with what he thinks he's convinced is a woman, but everybody else thinks is a man. And so he's like, I'm really confused about this. And that's what that story is. And he sticks to it and stuff. And the thing about it is that it resolves out really fast. He finds out pretty early. I mean, not pretty early. He finds out after being tortured for a
He
while.
never really wavers. He always doesn't.
Yeah, he's convinced that she really is a woman. I mean, and then of course when he finds out, it's the I knew it. You know, um, but it's not a fully formed story. You know, so I'm not sure we want to. You know, we see him as a steadfast character. Victoria, she sort of changes, but she changes as part of the main story. So
It's like it hinges, but it,
right. It's like it's hanging off. You know, it's like a lamprey. It's kind of got this little extra story thing that's on there, and it makes it, you know, in a comedy that works because it brings in other characters that can come and go, and you know, there's really no reason to have his girlfriend around once you've got, you know, except for conflict.
So let me ask you, when he like stops the car, okay, he's driving by, somebody gets kicked out of this bar into the alley.
Oh, he's looking for a bar that's like a rough bar.
Right,
Yeah,
so he's just looking for something really macho to do.
He wants to prove to himself. It's like,
He needs to prove his manhood to himself.
exactly.
He goes out looking to say, I need to exist in my manhood for this minute.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm starting to possibly doubt myself. I'm really uncomfortable with this. Let me just check and make sure.
Yeah.
Am I really a man? And so he goes in and orders the milk. You know, it's like he's just acting. You know, just purposely making trouble.
Mhm.
You know, when he says, "Are you looking for cow's milk or mother's milk? How about your sister's milk?" You know, it's like he's trying to provoke a fight and take on an entire bar, and he wins them over. You know, and so he's like, "Okay, I'm a man. I know where I am."
Mhm.
So it's very funny because he's doubting. You know, even he starts to, you know, there's one thing about a steadfast character, they aren't rock solid. They waver and they, you know, question, and you know, they get tempted, and it's like, no, okay, I am right. I'm who I am, and this is who I thought I was. So I don't need to waver from it. And that's why he was willing to give it up for her, because he didn't really matter at that point if she was male or female, because he loved her, whoever she is, or him, or whoever he is. And you know, that's why he was going to sign over his ownership part of his partnership, because that's really what he had decided. And you know, so it's just pretty funny. And then they have the scene where I love how what's this girlfriend's name?
Norma.
Jennifer Jason.
No, Leslie Ann Warren.
Leslie Ann Warren. Yeah. What's her name?
Norma Cassidy.
Norma. Right. Where, you know, she's taken in the room and she's, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Lock the door." She's just asleep with anything. Very funny. And then you just hear the scream. "Yeah, double timer." Okay. So I think we probably don't need to do a story form for that, but I think it'll explain some anomalous things we'll see. And the nice thing is, it may end up working really well and just supporting the existing one. It might be able to just be, you know, incorporated into it if it just has a weird feel to it. Okay, so let's identify the 4 through lines in their domains. Any suggestions for either the overall story or the main character?
Well,
She's activity.
World 3.
I'm sorry?
She's activity.
She's going to be a doer, so she'd definitely be either activity or situation. You're saying she's here, activity. Okay. That would put Toddy in psychology. Where would the overall story be?
Situation.
Okay, and what is the? Can you give me some examples of why the overall story would be in situation?
I'm gonna cough. Hang on a sec. Well, there's all kinds of situations going on in the overall story. There's the situation of her starving at the beginning. There's all the situations that they get into, with people running around to different, trying to sneak in and find out who they are.
Those
And the
aren't
situations that those create, the awkward situations.
okay. Those aren't situations. People don't run around generally in a situation. That's more of an activity type of thing. I will. I'll tell you. Well, any other thoughts before I?
Well, I I think the overall story is in one of the two internal domains. And here's my take on the whole thing. I think it was intended to be under fixed attitude, but I feel like the story falls really short in really fitting that domain. Because I told you that when I originally saw it, I thought that just it falls short on its own premise. And the makeup thing I mentioned to you was just one. That's just the one I remember. That's the one aspect. But when I saw it again, I realized, if the whole problem area is that Julie Andrews' character cannot. She's obviously super talented, but she can't get a job because there's this attitude that unless there's some weird some gender bending aspect or some other bizarre thing about you, we're not interested in spite of your talent. But there's not enough examples to set the stage that this attitude, this cultural attitude in this place and time is a problem. Because if it was, there would be an example of
Sandy,
Yeah.
you're calm down.
Okay, no.
But there is an example.
At least I'm not being the.
Thank you. For that, we were immediately thinking. There is an example of that, but only part of the story, and that's in the King side.
Okay.
That's where all the prejudice is.
Well, except I think there is intended to be a prejudice in the main story that's supposed to set things into motion. Well, for instance, that dance act that's like in the middle or past the middle of the movie where there is the gender, where it's like they're wearing the masks and they're tux on one side and dresses on one side. Mm-hmm. That should have been at the beginning to establish that there's a culture here that's only going to accept you if you're out of the norm. And talent is secondary to like I said, to doing something, gender bending or whatever. Where if there was an example where the guy that she auditions for, she has this amazing voice, this amazing talent, but then someone else of far inferior talent comes by and just has, something bizarro about him or her, and he says, "Oh, bravo, bravo," and there's, and so there's this,
But that's not fixed attitude. No. I mean, when you look at comedy, and you look at the domains. Situation, you have situation comedy. Activity, you have physical comedy, which you definitely see a lot of that in. Fixed attitude, you have comedy of manners. And manipulation or psychology, you have comedy of errors, where people are mistaken for other people, or men are mistaken for women, or women were mistaken for men. This is where most of Shakespeare's comedies are in comedy of manner, comedy of errors. And that's where most of the problem comes in. The first real big problem with it is that they, he's assuming that she can't be anything other than, this, highfalutin woman. But the boyfriend mistakes her for a man, which sets up the whole, you can be a man, pretending to be a man, pretending to be a woman, which is basically all about psychological games. And that's what that dance, where they have, going back the gender bending dance, that's exactly what that's about. Are they male or are they female? And is there a difference? And what difference does it make? And King is falling for a guy, but he's straight, so he doesn't understand how he could be falling for. I mean, that's right out of Twelfth Night. And it's the same thing as Orlando falling for Octavia. I mean, for whatever her name was.
Yeah.
Not Octavia, but who's pretending to be her brother. So you get this. That is all completely comedy of errors. You know, the attribution error, the idea of that the humor comes from making mistakes about who you think people are. And you even see, you know, a lot of the comedy comes from with the detective stuff. You know, it's like, okay, it looks like it's this way. Oops, they think it's something completely different. You know, so that kind of comedy goes through all that thread of it.
Right.
But the bias one absolutely goes, that's where this one is. That's the whole Chicago guy, the girlfriend, everybody, and that story is really dealing with fixed attitudes as a problem, as a serious problem, you know. And once they know that she's a woman, that he's a woman, all that goes away. That's resolved. There's no more, you know, that conflict is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So because suddenly the bias is no longer valid, and the bias is no longer challenged.
Mm-hmm. And
so I think that's why you're getting that. We do have that slightly schizophrenic aspect to the story, is that this one's a very American story, and this one's a very French story, because a lot of the comic farces are about jumping in people being mistaken for other people.
Sure, I just wish it had gone farther as that. I wish I wanted to see incidences where, you know, Julie Andrews is like, you know, is losing like a fake boob, you know. She's got a fake boob hiding her real boobs, but then it's like, you know, doing things like that to sort of continue, you know, perpetuate the image that she's really a man, you know, and more, and that's why it fell short for me of my expectation, because I thought it was gonna be a lot more outrageous in ways like that.
No, it was very conservative as far as a Blake Edwards
And also,
story.
most of the prejudice is targeted at King in the other story.
Right.
Yeah. But that's why I
All
feel
about
like
King and those around King. Yeah.
I feel like it was meant to be in fixed attitude, but I agree that when you look at manipulation and you look at the concerns underneath that really seems to fit the OS story better.
Playing a role, all that stuff, yeah.
And there's so much talk about pretending, but I mean, conceiving an idea, developing a plan, and that's, you know, and that's where you see Toddy.
Well, you start off with a conceiving idea. It's like, I got this great idea.
Yeah. And again, I wish that had been set up a better. I mean, it's like, oh, this, you know.
Well, but it's a comedy. It's really light, you know, and that's the problem, is that they spend at least an hour and 10 minutes in music.
So many comedies are just structurally, they don't make sense.
Right. And we have whenever we're doing a comedy, we always have a hard time getting the structure because it's so light in material.
Mm-hmm.
It's very. You guys have the term, use the French word vaudeville. Vaudeville.
Oh, vaudeville.
Vaudeville.
Yeah.
For the like when you have a stage and people come into rooms and okay. It feels very vaudeville.
Vaudevillian.
Yes.
Vaudeville.
Vaudeville. Yes. Okay. Oh, that's not an American word. See, them French using our American phrases. So I mean, I think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be a psychology story. And to get back to the reason I don't think the overall story is in situation is that a situation is where something is stuck, and I don't think anybody's really stuck in this story. A lot of things are changing.
It feels like a process.
Right. Whereas you see, you know, in the activity, what's interesting is when they're investigating the couple, they're investigating Todd and Victoria, the partners. That's where you get a lot of that physical activity. You know, because the investigation, which should be over here, and is sort of instigated from over here, but most of it ends up in physical activity.
Yeah.
You know, but that you see, he's definitely more of the physical comedy.
And then the other sub-story really feels that the relationship story is situation.
It's definitely a situation, right?
It's like we're stuck together. We're like, what do we do now? Because there's this gender issue.
Right. There's this big gender issue that's a real problem because, you know, one's straight and one's gay, supposedly. Yes, but not really. You know, so. And then that would put her in a situation which I think is actually closer to what you were talking about earlier about she's a
woman.
she's a woman
Yeah.
who is an amazing singer who cannot get a job because of that she's just too good. She's too cultured. And so
What is it exactly they tell her? Well, why is there? Because I haven't seen the
well,
audition scene.
he wants her. She says, I'm basically a coloratura. I'm a phenomenal singer, a trained singer. He goes, well, maybe we need someone with a little less training. He wants somebody. He wants, you see that club. It's it's a place where Toddy performs.
Okay.
So it's very bawdy.
Yeah, she's literally over.
And she's absolutely way too highfalutin for that. And then she has, right before she leaves, she sings an E flat, and his wine glass shatters.
Oh.
That's the clue that when you see that shatter the
okay.
next time, it's like, wait.
Fine. Okay.
Yes, like, oh, there's a clue. And that's why I was saying that's one of those actions that happens that turns the story,
Okay,
the overall
that
story.
is completely
Possible.
blind. Okay.
Yeah, it is. And he goes, what was that? And Toddy says, E flat. Yeah. So so she's definitely sort of the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then she's even further defined by the fact that she's a woman playing a man. Like, I'm not really a man, but you're a man, and you're a prince. It's like, I'm not really a prince or a man, so how? So it really, and that's what she's stuck at. Literally, what she says, if I have to bind my breasts down, and if I have to do this for 20 years, they're going to look like old wallets, So it's just, this is something that is completely not good for her. She's very frustrated by it. So we see more of the main character, and of course you've got Toddy then in Fixed Attitude, which I think is really good. He's absolutely just
Set on that. Yeah.
We can do this. Keep your attitude. And
But even as he's even set up as a person with a pretty fixed attitude. The way he conducts himself. The set
that's how he
club.
gets in a conflict with his
with
boy.
customers.
Yes.
Well, and with the boyfriend's
Right.
entourage.
Right. Okay. So now, if we want to, let's go down one level and start looking at the domains. I'm sorry, the concerns. We have again the sort of the four choices we have. We either have, if you look at the, are you going to turn it over there? Oh, excellent. Okay. So we basically have the four domains have four different colors: yellow, red, green, and purplish, bluish, purple, whatever. And you'll see in each of the subsets, the quad inside of it, it's also yellow, orange, blue, or purple, and green. And the way that this works is when you pick one concern, like if I pick the upper left, the yellow, it actually picks it for all four. So all you have to do is pick one of them. So you're going to have really just one of four choices. You have the yellows, which are past, understanding, memory, developing a plan. The reds are how things are changing, doing, impulsive responses, playing a role. The blues or purples with present, gathering information, contemplation, and conceiving an idea. Or the greens, which are future, obtaining innermost desires, and changing one's nature. Anybody have a
Like the upper right one?
upper right? So that's
Yeah.
the how things are changing, doing, impulsive responses, playing a role. Okay, that's one. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it's not.
all right.
Yeah.
Past or memories.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it really begs the question of who is this woman? Where'd she come from? What drove her to, she's. When I was reading the description on IMDb, they talk about she's a British singer, but that she isn't even established as being from Britain. There's
Accent.
well, her accent's fine, and she's Julie Andrews, but it's like it's really a gaping hole in her through line. Is what is the deal about her past and what got her here?
But that's the nature of a story where you have a character without a serious emotional problem. or even a serious physical problem, unless it's, like I'm starving. Something that can be readily fixed, one step and it's fixed. That's not the kind of backstory problem that someone comes with. So usually those stories are stories where the main character is a steadfast character, but they don't have to be. Like this one, she's pretty much toeing the line, and then she finally throws in the towel. But it starts off, she takes the first step is a small step, and then each subsequent step, it's a bigger step and a bigger step, and it's harder to maintain. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, she decides, I'm not going to maintain it. I'm going to throw this away.
It would have been nice to know a little bit about her past so we can contextualize, what her situation, and invest in her that much more.
But they didn't want that.
Or they didn't think about it.
No, it's not. It's a light comedy.
I have a feeling they had like 20 hours of footage, and they were like, "We gotta cut this."
Probably. But I don't know that they really needed it. I mean,
No.
if you're doing a drama, you need to put that in there because you want to understand why someone who would.
But it's even more important for a comedy, honestly. But whatever, it is what it is.
Okay.
The point being, it's not in that quadrant.
Right. Okay, so we think we got one that's where it's in how things are changing, doing impulsive response, playing a role. Any other of them that seem, of the other two that sound I can be ruled in or ruled out?
I'm on board with that. Developing a plan is a really good signpost.
Yeah, signpost.
And
As
conceiving an
idea is a good
idea
signpost.
is a really strong signpost. But
Changing ones.
playing a role is that's just what the story's about.
Yeah. I mean, it pretty much is.
And
you have basically the activity of doing, and this is all the performance stuff. And then you've got impulsive responses, with him, and then she's here looking at how things are changing, and for her, she's seeing it. It immediately changes for the better, but then it becomes more and more difficult because because she gets a romance that she's really involved in, and she has to play this role where it's not comfortable, because in order to play the role effectively, she has to challenge and threaten that relationship, which it's like, this isn't the direction I really wanted to be going. I don't want to be a man. I didn't get on this journey to become a man. I'm playing a man, but I don't want to really play a man.
And yet she goes along with it because it's going really well.
Right.
Yeah.
She is. The job is working great, and until it's not.
That's why I think her through I really like fact.
Fact fantasy. Yeah. Security threat.
She's a woman.
Right. Yep. And of course, and you've got with in the whole how do we do this training kind of stuff. You've got wisdom, skill, experience,
ability, and desire.
Well, maybe ability. Well, I don't know. Knowledge.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you guys were talking about it playing a role in the relationship story?
No, overall story. We think that the overall story is a psychology story, a manipulation story, because the kind of humor that is explored is the kind of humor that's called comedy of errors.
Okay, yeah, no, I get that. Interestingly enough, Dramatica won't let me set it to that.
Maybe
I have situation for her because you said that, and that put overall story as activity.
Probably because
you selected the growth would be my guess. You probably selected growth of stop, and she's really a start character. That'd be my guess. No, she's a.
No, she would be a star character. She would be a star character because, I mean, just
so did you choose the main character growth?
Yes.
Yeah, that's that. Unchoose that one, and you'll be able to make it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Because really, she's not doing anything wrong. She just that she has to stop. She's kind of needs to expand her horizons. you know, and actually broaden her scope more, and that's that. She is a star character, even without even just choosing it independently. I think she's a star character.
Yeah. Well, she definitely does not feel like she's her own worst enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, the chip on the shoulder. She's not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get into the software now, because we're going to get into it at a higher resolution. We'll start this up. How you doing there, Bob?
Pretty good.
Excellent.
Holy God.
Sorry, that was the screen going down. And I did it very slowly because it will really make a lot more noise if I pull it down quickly.
Be happy we have whiteboards instead of blackboards. Otherwise, we just run our fingernails.
Nice.
No, I don't need to see what pictures I.
Obviously, you change the resolution of your screen. So,
Yes. That's because this lovely projector is rather limited. So our main character is female. All right, so we have change, doer, leave it alone, action, option lock, success, good. So the overall story was manipulation, concern of playing a role. Okay, so now we're down to 32 story farms, and save this. Let's go to the theme browser. And look in the overall story initially. So this is the, we're looking at playing a role. Within it we have knowledge, ability, thought, and desire. In knowledge we have proven, unproven, process, result. Oh. Okay. Ability we have effect, cause, accurate, non-accurate. Thought we have theory, hunch, ending, unending. And desire we have trust, test, expectation, determination. Any of those?
Proven.
I think it's either knowledge or ability.
Me too.
Okay.
And just on that level, I think, well, the ability of pulling this off obviously comes to the question, but it's also a question of what people know or they don't know, or it's what they think they know, but I think it would be knowledge versus thought rather than the other.
Well, and if you think about the detective stuff, the proven, unproven, process, result definitely seems to fit into that. Let's look over in our main.
Accurate, non-accurate too.
Yeah, that's go with my other.
Right. So let's look at our main character, see if one of these jumps out as being better.
Proven and unproven is the fact that we love.
Well, then,
There you go.
Okay, so that seems to be the quad. So we're seeing under the fact.
Yeah, that's
Fact. It's got proven, unproven, accurate, unaccurate, non-accurate, which is for Victoria, which I think is her. I think it's really quite good. So this would be the main character issue. Now we're down to possible 8 story forms, but 4 of these. These would be the main. So, which is the problem? Which is the solution? Which is the symptom result? And that's we think the change character.
Well, she does. Okay, obviously she has a problem with proving that she's, that she's up to the task of performing, of being, being a star. I mean, that from the first time we see her, she's trying to prove herself. So
she always
what-
knows
that
she's
was-
talented.
but
She
you-
always believes in her.
Yeah,
she
she
could
did.
prove herself to others.
You could argue also maybe that non-accurate is the problem and accurate is the solution. In the sense that in the end, she decides to follow something that is within tolerances as opposed to keeping on going with these things that are out of.
I mean, if you think, okay, if she buys into, okay, I'm going to go into this role, into this situation that is really in the realm of not really being within tolerance. I mean, it's a fraud, I'm going to sort of put myself in this situation, and then from that point on, she's really going to be focusing on not on the trying to make it more accurate, because that would sort of undo the bigger issue. But that's true. Ultimately, she has to go, okay, look, I'm really a girl. It's like, let's get, the perceptions of me. It's like, oh, I'm really a girl.
Okay.
Really a woman. So if we do that,
So symptom
proven that's good.
right, the symptom is proven. Right. And see, that's the thing. That's where you have the problem at the beginning when she says, I'm an expert. I'm a proven quantity, and it's like, well, we want something a little less proven. And it's so like, well, those are sort of the count and not count thing. It's like, well, it doesn't matter because that's the smoke and mirrors.
Well, the response of unproven is that she goes ahead and does something that she's never done before. That
and she also has to unprove that she's a woman constantly, just because
Right.
it's right there. So she just needs to
Right,
get rid of that
and
evidence.
she's constantly, she's got all these things that sort of prove that she's a woman, and she's constantly trying to, unprove that.
Yeah.
Trying to, take it outside of things that she's never done before, and put her in this shaky. Right. Now, well, let's see what it does with the overall story. So we have a problem of non-accurate, of course, and the symptom is effect, and the response is cause. Which, of course, that's exactly what the nightclub owner is trying to do. He sees that the whole place is torn apart. It's like, I want to know who did this. The solution to my problem is I find out who did this. Because that's really sort of the very thin conflict in the background that's even challenging or threatening them just perpetuating this fraud indefinitely is that investigation.
The solution of accurate. Okay, this is a man. This is
a male mental sex.
Yeah.
What?
No,
What do you
this
mean?
is like the final scene.
Yes.
Where,
Oh, right. This
yeah.
is right.
This is accurate. This is like, proved by A plus B.
Yes. Okay. And then so we see. Let's go back to our story engine, and we still have the mental sex either way. So we're
Removing the relationship.
right. So we've got the catalyst, the inhibitor, unique ability. So let's look at. Let me do one thing. I want to go to the unique ability. Main character unique ability is going to be fantasy or threat.
Critical flaw.
Seems to me to be fantasy. but
Yeah.
yeah.
Say fantasy.
Critical flaw is value or confidence.
Down. Is it type of lifestyle that you value?
Well,
Well,
if it's-
she does have a certain sort of confidence, and she even talks about it when she's.
And so,
Well, could it be a lack of confidence that's her critical flaw?
I would say that'd be closer. That would undo her that could trip her up.
No,
So if you were going to rewrite this story, you would want to make her more insecure.
It would increase tension. Yeah, if it was as opposed to, she's definitely, her value doesn't seem like a negative, but I don't see that. Let me see about our influence character, unique ability, worry, or worth. This would be the thing that would undermine Victoria's. This would be something from Toddy that would undermine Victoria's ability to use her unique ability to have it end in success.
Worth sounds pretty good because it's all the thing that he values and that he's sort of fixated upon.
And that would undermine her, for them to successfully perpetuate the fraud?
No, for her to actually choose a different like address her own issues.
But that's not what the unique ability is about. Unique ability makes the main character uniquely suited so that it ends in success. And it does, we have it so that it's ending in success.
It's
So
ending in success because how does that interlock?
okay, the way that the main character unique ability.
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying in this story, how does that interlock? What is it she does in your story?
Well, we haven't determined that yet. Yeah.
How can worry be a unique ability? Worry is not an ability.
Well, the unique ability of the influence characters is the quality that makes the influence character uniquely suited to undermine the main character's unique ability. So it's essentially it's kind of like an external version of a critical flaw. It has a way to undermine them, and then
sort of like we're going to rent this expensive hotel room and we're going to jump out the window and show them.
Yes, yeah.
You're going to screw up the main character, the main character, and solving your role story.
Actually, honestly, and that's the case where I think lack of worry because he is so she is worried. Yeah. He is totally not worried about anything, and in a way that kind of gets under her skin. It gets under our skin. I think it's very impactful. That lack of worry.
So worry could be lack of worry. Like
yes.
It could be either way up.
Right. Just as obtaining could be gaining something or losing something.
Memories could
be remembering or forgetting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the spectrum. The spectrum of it can be positive or negative, too much, too little.
And it can be targeted at specifically or from.
Or attributed to it or an attribute of it. So all those flavors are completely valid.
How many people speak language?
1, 2.
You guys want Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
No, I've never had the
but we are going to give you some cards, and you have to follow.
Yeah, the Dramatica cards.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do the benchmark. That's sometimes really helpful. So what a benchmark is? Each through line has one. The benchmark is the way to evaluate how far along the through line is progressing. So there's going to be either something that is getting more and more or less and less. So, for instance, if it was developing a plan, they're developing a plan and they get it, more and more plans, or the plans are getting, weaker and weaker and weaker.
Shifts.
Huh?
It's just that it shifts.
It shifts. Yeah, it's a gauge. It's a benchmark against which sort of to measure the whole thing. You'll see with her, you're going to see it either in terms of the past or the present. Well, I think we know it's the present.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why you always want to do, especially if you get down to these ones where you don't know. Look around and find if you see a low hanging fruit. Those are the ones you want to go for.
Actually, that make the benchmark under activity and learning, gathering information. You can see. Okay.
Now, just I could see the past as being it if the past is like the first scene, because that happened. That's the first scene with her, because that happens before the story starts. Well, no, I'm just saying I could see that as it. I don't know that that's really what's going on, but I could see that.
No, I'm just saying I haven't seen this.
Well, the one where she basically sings at that nightclub and proves herself worthy and shatters the glass,
Oh,
and that's what, and then eventually she's the one who causes the ruckus.
Both that guy and the waiter guy show up later and sort
Right.
of threaten.
Right. So I mean, that's
frog.
generally not what past means, but past just means anything before the story starts.
Yeah.
But let's see the present and see what it picks. Huh?
I mean, I do like the present just because I do feel like that what's catching up to her is just living life. I mean,
Her unique ability is threat. You have confidence, so that's in there.
can you change it to
Yes,
past? Just
of course I can. That's the nice thing, is you can unmake choices very quickly. So that makes her a holistic thinker, which is never really strong one way or the other.
Fantasy is more ability.
For critical flaw of value, catalyst of thought and inhibitor of
I
wisdom.
could see, I could
I mean,
argue values, but some of the rest feel really fun.
yeah, I clearly don't see memories at all here. In the relationship understanding.
Yeah.
Those just don't read. Whereas the presence really does. You could easily see the threat that she's posing to the club owner. It's basically
For weeks as
well, and all the business is going to the other clubs because he sees it as a huge threat,
And also recognize the threat of what her choice is.
Well, she also recognized the threat that's coming in the form of the Chicago
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
Right. That would be a really good way to incorporate in that part of that story.
that she can recognize the threat?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, threat is sort of like is the topic, and then but it's the topic put in the context of this is the thing that's going to make her give her the piece that will allow this all to work out. And so let's say her ability to recognize the threat, or respond to the threat proposed by the Chicago group allows her to get away with the fraud, which they do. Because if she didn't do that, then she would have gone on, and they would have been caught, and that would have been ended in failure. And we like the critical flaw of confidence. I think that's really, especially if it's a lack of confidence. I mean, she seems to be very confident, but not outside of singing. Not in her role as a man. So, so the desire and inhibitor.
But also, when you equate unique ability with catalyst and critical flaw with inhibitor, where it's like increases the pace of conflict and decrease that in that particular case, I think in her through line, when she is kind of confident, especially in that scene with James Garner, it's like
tones it down.
Yeah,
that's true.
I don't understand how confidence is a critical flaw for her.
Again, it's not a critical flaw. Just like a unique ability is not a skill, which most people would think of it as a skill, kind of like Indiana Jones's bullwhip.
Yeah,
Right. That's not what that's supposed to mean. The unique ability, it's much more a logistical issue. It's if you think of a main character and they're dealing with their own personal crime, and then you've got the big story, and they're part in that. But why would you be exploring this main character in the context of this larger story? There's got to be areas that they link together. Well, one of them is the unique ability, is the reason that this main character is tied to the big picture because they have the key to making things work out successfully in the big picture.
Alright, so you look at it in terms of main story.
Yes.
Doesn't it also, to some degree address help them address their own personal issue, or is it strictly overall story?
It's primarily overall story.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a catalyst and an inhibitor. In fact, the catalyst and inhibitor is
Because
the
it always
same
shows up
thing.
in
It's
their through line, so it throws me off.
right. It's one of the things that goes across.
That's linked.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you look at a domain. When you look at the domains, well, they cross because they're dynamic pairs and they have relationships to the
And so
other
it-
domains.
So isn't it reflected in the ring that through line as well, in their own through line?
Yes. It's expressed in their through line,
Okay.
but the effect of it allows for. That's kind of like the key to something happening in the overall story.
So it's like she expects in her personal through line, for instance, a degree or a lack of degree of confidence, and that plays a particular part in the overall story.
Right. So let's say she's got a pretty active sense of threat,
Yeah.
and when she feels the threat's getting too hot, she says enough's enough.
Yeah.
Well, because she did that, they ended success because they just dodged. They end just early enough before they got discovered. That's how that would effectively be shown out. So let's.
I like to influence characters' critical flaw security in that what Brent's to undermine him is the fact that this whole situation, living in the whole hotel room and everything, is really insecure.
Yes.
But and so that does threaten to undermine him, but his distinctive lack of worry about it as his unique ability maintains.
Well, ultimately,
keeps the
lack of security, does in fact does undermine that worry because he's not really doesn't effectively override her sense of threat, which is what when she pulls the plug.
Okay.
Which allows them not to get caught. You see, it's this sort of chain of events, and that's how you link these separate sort of perspectives together. Even though you have players playing role in one place and in another, thematically they all get sort of intertwined so that it really is kind of like when you cook something, all of the pieces are all baked in. You can't just pull one thing out and say, oh, I'm going to take that and I'm going to move it, because you'll be pulling out a long thread that unties a whole bunch of other things. And I think, in the relationship, you've got basically learning, gathering information is the benchmark. It's sort of him teaching her how to sort of the ropes, how to.
You see that when they're dancing together as a performance, and he's this way, and so well, he taught me everything I know, or there's that back and forth.
Right. And then, so I think let's look at the signpost. And so it starts off with developing a plan, conceiving an idea, playing a role, and changing one's nature. Well, this is an excellent 3 and 4. I would probably have swapped those two, although.
Because that feel like that would have a really strong midpoint.
I mean, this isn't a bad first signpost, first act, developing a plan. That's the whole. It's coming up with the idea and putting it into effect. I'm not sure where the transitions are. Let me see where we have for her. I start with how things are changing, the future, the present, and the past. I don't really see the past much, except being, her past as a woman. So, I mean, that's really lightweight. Isn't there some exploration about the Count's past?
Oh, you mean the character?
Yeah, but that's its element. That's all I'm about. Sorry. Are you going next? Okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, the third act, if you look in the relationship, obtaining, it's all about you know, they're pretty much sitting pretty and have everything they need, and it's also, you know, King comes in the very end of the first act or the beginning in the beginning of the second act, because he comes in for the first show, right? He's not expected, and then he shows up. I looked at the time. That's 40 minutes into the movie.
40?
40.
What, and when James Garner comes in?
Yes.
Right. Because
When the first song starts.
Because they said they start their act in the Act 2A.
Right. So if you think about that, I mean, that's really far along. I mean, now, granted, it's a 2 hour and 15-minute film, 10 minutes of which are credits, so 8 minutes of credits. But that's a long way into the movie.
And you're talking in terms of what the overall story signposts?
Well, we were still looking at the relationship,
Okay.
and I was just wondering, you know, at what point, you know, when the act breaks were, but
No.
actually, I think I think you see the Toddy stuff,
A lot in
and
Act
yeah,
One.
there's a lot of Act
Then much of the whole
One.
story. It's like,
In fact, I wonder. I have to look at the timing, but I wonder if the whole developing a plan really is the first act before he gets to get the idea about making her into a woman, because that, you know, the first performance is shortly after that, and that's 40 minutes in. So, you know, because it does seem, if you look at it as a developing a plan, it is kind of like, well, how are we going to get, you know, how are we going to survive? How are we going to, the two of them, you know, because the very first scene, what you don't see is that Toddy's in bed with his boyfriend. The boyfriend gets up and takes basically almost all of his money, and is a little jerk. Leaves. Toddy goes, and then we see our Victoria trying out, and Toddy comes in after he's had a coffee, comes in and watches as she's singing her more of it's basically opera, and that's when he first sees her. She doesn't really notice him because he's in the audience, and then the owner says, you know, sorry, too bad, and she leaves, and then she goes after passing out while looking at somebody eating in the restaurant, eating this big eclair. She goes back home, and the landlord is trying to throw her out because he takes the key from her because she can't barely even put it in. Helps her get in, and then tries to take out his money in kind. She sees the cockroach, you know, and that's where that sort of goes. And then she has this plan to eat, make a living, you know. And then Toddy comes in and she invites him to eat with her, and it goes from there. So there's quite a bit that all of that you could easily see that as developing a plan, as you know, some sort of strategy to how we get by. And then the act turn is the punch, the driver is the punch, and then ding, you got an idea. You know, that easily see that one as a very quick, you know, turn. And then the first song is, gosh, what is it, 10, 12 minutes long or something? It's really long.
well,
The one where she's doing
the audition?
yeah, no, the introduction of Victoria. It's a very long song. So, you know, I think this is a pretty good signpost order. So now's a really good time for you to ask questions of
Okay,
the
what's
process.
the best usage of this software? I just finished a script.
I think so. Unless there are any questions about the story form. Yep. I think that's about it.
Finish it off.
Thank you, guys. So your question was,
What's the